but as a reader, I don't really mind like the aspect of variety, and it is something I encourage or mention to writers that I work with in terms of like, yeah, you can have in a poetry collection a span of different subject matters and tones and styles. It's that balancing act of like they hang together, it's cohesive, but there's variety, so you don't feel like you're just carbon copying the same thing over and over again with little slight variations. So
Right, and you
the
can really set the structure of the book accordingly as well, especially in poetry, of course, but even in nonfiction, break it into sections and do something like that to kind of guide the reader if you want to have similar pieces together or even have those speak together. I'm really interested personally in the white spaces, even certainly in poetry, but even in nonfiction, whether it's super lyrical or narrative, how we can take advantage of the white spaces to give the reader time to pause and absorb the various sections. The white spaces, even between chapters or essays, depending on what you're reading, I think are so critical.
Mhm.
huh. Yeah, I know I maybe never thought about that as much with the prose collection. But yeah, your book, Simmons, does have like photos embedded in at the start of each chapter, for example. And then Kath yours has photos and images as well, interspersed throughout. So yeah, is it like the paragraphing even section breaks within an essay, just creating different chunks? Is that, part of your intention then too?
Yeah, for me, it is a pause. It's a pause. It's a pause for the reader and for me as well, and it indicates transition, like it's not going to be a sentence or necessarily even topic that's exactly continuing from the previous paragraph. So I love white spaces. Yeah, I use them a lot, and I think they're just kind of a sign, that says slow down for a minute to the reader, and then and even, you can put the book down and come back to it because there's a natural sort of break right there.
Yeah, and if you're writing, as I have done with several of my essays, braided essays, where you have two seemingly disparate topics that you're writing about or writing to, and they finally come together in the end, and hopefully some sort of epiphanal moment. The section breaks are critical there. And in fact, I have to admit, I argued with my publisher from a design perspective that they didn't give enough space between the sections or even sort of in introducing each of the essays. But one thing I use to help that in some essays, especially if you kind of want momentum building and building, is a numbered essay.
Yeah.
So each section has its own number, and it may or may not be chronological, it may or may not be linear, but it continues to build so that by the time you get to that last section, that last numbered section, there's a point to the numbering, first of all, and it sort of concludes satisfactorily in that kind of, well, we think of list poems, but maybe almost a list essay in a way.
In one of your essays, um, Simmons, you kind of mentioned the technology of like listening to music. So there's like, a parallel and how we take in text information and how we take in music. Um, and I guess counterintuitively, maybe the more available music is, like the more disconnected we are from hearing things, right? That's kind of the the overarching message. Anything to fill in with that, maybe?
Sure, yeah, I'm really interested in the interplay between technology and place, and particularly technology and either whether it's our built or natural environments. And what spurred the essay you're talking about, which is titled Songbird, was I was up in New Hampshire at one of the state parks, and there was a kid who, this was back in the mid 2000s, so right as iPods were sort of coming out before phones and before AirPods, but certainly with earbuds. Had his earbuds in and was listening to music, and we're outside of this beautiful waterfall, and it got me thinking, well, how does that experience how does listening to music at what was a really loud volume, I could tell, um, impact his experience out in the wild. And so, I kind of wrote around that, and what you realize, my presumption was it changes it not for the better, but my realization in sort of exploring that and doing the same thing myself and writing about that was no, it's just a different experience. It doesn't mean it's a better or worse experience, whatever that is anyway, but it certainly alters it. And of course there are ramifications of using devices like that, phones and whatever, and what that means socially. And we've learned a lot about that since then. Most of it, unfortunately, not very good with when it comes to isolation and whatever. But it is, the world we live in, and technology certainly plays a huge part of who we are and what we do. So I continue to think about that, and I had a lot of fun with that essay. It was kind of one of those you write in real time. Okay, well, I'm going to go take a walk. I'm going to listen to the Rolling Stones as I walk through the Vermont wilderness, and let's just see what happens.
And one of the things I wrote down was just like considering like the analog experience. So yeah, that's kind of a way. Okay, let's play around with it. Let's see how these two things interact. But like kind of going back even to Cat, like your experience as a rancher, like I don't, it doesn't get more analog than that. You can't fast forward, you can't skip ahead. Um, there's something really really intriguing about, I guess, like how connected you must be to the animals, to the surroundings, even before we started recording, to the weather patterns you're kind of mentioning. So, um, yeah, I guess through your own experience, how has that connectedness developed? Did you learn it along the way? Was it something you gained early in life? Was it something that came from somewhere else? Was it formal, informal?
I don't know that I had to learn that. I think that was the a need for connection to the place, the Aina, that's the Hawaiian word. It it was in me, and I needed to find wherever I lived, even as a kid, I needed to find a way to connect. That was maybe my spiritual grounding. And so my life choices, other than being a heroin addict, my life choices were all about that. I made choices about where I lived and what I did and how I worked. And like I tried a 35-hour a week indoor job, and I couldn't. It was at a publishing house, and I was an assistant editor, and like so the work was right for me, but I couldn't be inside that much. I can't, it doesn't work for me. So I've been lucky in that I could follow follow that need, that drive, and just create lives around it. I mean, I haven't, I cowboyed and ranched, with my first husband, and then did other things in between, was a river runner, and then in Hawaii paddled outrigger canoes, and so both of those things are very connected to the land and place. And I think I read recently on Facebook that there's a name for I guess people, or the syndrome or whatever, of people who are writing or doing whatever and can't listen to music while they're doing it. I think Linda Hasselstrom wrote something about it on Facebook, and I was really interested because I can't. I just don't have any. The only sounds are what the animals around me make, my dogs, my horses, the cows, whatever. um the turkeys, like when I'm out in Disappointment Valley, I mean, just listening to all that going on around me I mean, that's life, that's real. I don't know. Yeah.
Kat, how
So
about when you write? Is it the same way? You can't listen to anything, you've got to have silence? or
Silence.
the sounds of the
Or,
world, I suppose, more than
y-
silence.
absolutely. Absolutely. I can't, and maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's something, multitasking I'm not very good at, but when no, I'm listening, I'm feeling, I'm writing about what I hear, uh, no, I just, no, I don't have music, and I don't even just in my normal life, I don't have sound on unless I'm driving somewhere, and then I stopped listening to the news in January, and and I listen to a lot of books on tape now, and that's okay because I'm driving. I don't know, and I can fully get involved in the book. I pay attention to the road too, but yeah, but I couldn't. I just yeah, I can't do it.
That's interesting. I'm sort of the opposite. Not about the news. I'm with you on that, but that I always have music going. Not always in our house, although we have a old record player, and I love to put vinyl on. And but that's speaking of analog. That's a beautiful analog experience. But even here, so I am in front of the screen at least 40, sometimes 60, some 70 hours a week because of the work here that I do in my full-time job and then with terrain.org, not to mention writing when I can squeeze that in. But I do have writing, but it's almost like white music for me. I'm
Huh.
sorry, white noise.
Yeah.
May or may not be white music, but white noise for sure. And but it can't be something I'm unfamiliar with, and it can't be something that has let's say too intriguing lyrics because then that sort of you go into that world, you start thinking about that, and that's not what you want. But so a lot of what we might call shoegaze or light jazz or things along lo-fi, things along that nature. But for me, I don't know, there's energy with that, a kind of a low sustaining energy that I appreciate.